The massive doors of the Galactic Council chamber slid open with a deep hum that seemed to shake the very air. Ambassador Lee Haniel walked forward slowly, his black uniform crisp against the alien architecture that towered above him like frozen lightning. Behind him, his small team of humans looked tiny in the vast space filled with beings from across the galaxy. Dr. Kim Sora adjusted her recording device nervously as she took in the sight. Before them, creatures of pure energy floated near the ceiling, their purple light casting strange shadows. Tall crystal beings stood in perfect rows, their bodies catching and reflecting light in ways that hurt to look at directly. Insect-like warriors with 6 arms and razor-sharp claws clicked, their mandibles in what might have been conversation or threat. Captain Jang Hyok kept his hand near his sidearm, though he knew it would be useless here. His job was to protect the ambassador. But how do you fight beings that could read your thoughts or turn your own weapons against you with a gesture? At the center of it all sat the High Council, 5 beings so ancient and powerful that the air itself seemed to bend. Around them, the largest was Kelvith Prime, a shifting mass of purple energy that spoke without words, its thoughts pressing directly into human minds like cold fingers. Species designation 7739. The voice echoed in their heads, making Kim Sora wince. Classification: Tier 9, barely above the classification of useful animals. Haniel stepped forward, his translator device crackling to life. Honored council members, humanity requests an audience to discuss our status within the Confederation. We believe there has been some mistake in our classification. A sound like breaking glass filled the chamber as the crystal beings laughed. Admiral Nexus, their leader, spoke in a voice like wind chimes in a storm. Mistake? You lack the most basic requirement for higher classification, telepathic ability. Your minds are closed, chaotic, primitive. Your technology? Added another council member. This one, resembling a massive tree with eyes instead of leaves, relies on crude chemical reactions and kinetic force. You have not evolved beyond the need for physical tools? Park Minho, the military advisor, watched silently as data flowed across his hidden scanner. Every word, every gesture, every display of power was being recorded and analyzed. The aliens spoke freely, clearly believing humans too stupid to understand the importance of what they were hearing. Your species shows typical lower-tier fragmentation, continued Kelvith Prime, its energy form pulsing with what seemed like amusement. No unified government, no single leader. You fight among yourselves over resources and territory like animals competing for scraps. Haniel tried again. Respected Council, while we may not possess telepathic abilities, humanity has shown remarkable adaptability and innovation. Our scientists have made breakthroughs in quantum mechanics, artificial intelligence, and space travel that rival any species in the galaxy. Rival? The insect-like Krathen? Representative clicked its mandibles in obvious scorn. You achieved faster-than-light travel only 50 years ago. We mastered it before your species learned to make fire. Your artificial intelligence is barely capable of basic calculations compared to our living computers. Dr. Kim Sora bit her tongue to keep from responding. She had spent years developing AI systems that could adapt and learn in ways these aliens clearly didn't understand. But now was not the time to correct their assumptions. The decision has been made, Kelvith Prime announced, its mental voice carrying absolute authority. Humanity will be assigned to mining operations in sectors 445. Through 512, your colonies will be relocated to make room for more suitable species. Your ships will be limited to sublight speeds within Confederation space. And if we refuse? Haniel asked quietly. The temperature in the chamber seemed to drop. Every alien turned to look at the small human delegation with expressions ranging from amusement to outright hostility. Refusal is not an option, said Admiral Nexus, its crystal body glowing brighter. Tier 9 species do not refuse. They comply, or they are corrected. The Krathen warrior stepped forward, its 6 arms spreading wide to display weapons that seemed to grow directly from its body. Correction involves the demonstration of superior force until compliance is achieved. Few species require more than one such demonstration. Captain Jang Hyok tensed, but Haniel placed a calming hand on his arm. The ambassador knew they were vastly outnumbered and outgunned. This was not the time for heroics. "We understand," Haniel said carefully. "Humanity will ... consider your requirements." "Consideration is not required," Kelvith Prime replied coldly. "Compliance is mandatory. You have 30 standard days to begin relocation of your colonies. Failure to comply will result in the deployment of enforcement fleets." As the human delegation was escorted from the chamber by floating security drones, Kim Sora noticed something the aliens had missed entirely. Her recording device had captured not just their words, but detailed scans of their technology, their defensive positions, even the energy signatures of their most powerful weapons. Walking through the corridors of the massive station, Park Min-ho whispered so quietly only his companions could hear. "Did you get everything?" Kim Sora nodded, a small smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "Everything. And they talked like we weren't even worth worrying about," Good Haniel said. Softly, let them keep thinking that. Behind them, the aliens continued their discussions, already dismissing humanity as just another conquered species that would fall in line like all the others had for thousands of years. They had no idea how wrong they were. Admiral Corvin floated in his command chamber, his purple energy form pulsing with lazy confidence as he reviewed the mission files. Around him, holographic displays showed the positions of his fleet, 200 warships that represented the smallest force the Confederation had deployed in over a century. "Human compliance operation," he said to his second-in-command, letting amusement color his telepathic voice. "They could have sent a single ship and achieved the same result." Commander Vexera, a crystalline being whose body reflected the starlight, streaming through the viewport, chimed in agreement. "The intelligence reports confirm typical Tier 9 behavior, Admiral. Complete disorganization. Their leaders cannot even agree on a surrender strategy." The tactical display showed intercepted human communications from across their 47 colony worlds. President Yujuan of Earth could be heard arguing loudly with Colonial Governor Nam Yunji of the Centauri system. Taeon seemed to be fighting with Admiral Shin Gaon of something called the Terran Defense Fleet. "Listen to this." Vexera played back a recording of human voices, their primitive audio communications crackling with static. The Earth's president is actually yelling at her own military commander. They blame each other for the situation instead of working together. Corvan's energy form brightened with what passed for laughter among his species. Emotional creatures. They let their feelings control their decisions. No wonder they achieved so little as a species. The Krathan tactical officer, a massive insect-like being called Razorclaw, clicked its mandibles as it studied the battle formations. "Admiral, our scouts report human ships fleeing in all directions. Some have jumped to hyperspace. Others hide behind asteroids or retreat to their planets. No coordinated defense." "Of course not," Corvin replied. "They probably cannot even communicate effectively between their different groups. Each colony likely thinks only of saving itself." Through the fleet's shared telepathic network, Corvin could feel the confidence of his officers. This was not a battle. It was a police action. The kind of simple operation they used to train new commanders. "Sir," reported the intelligence officer, a gaseous Velter whose voice whispered through the ship's communication system. "Human military strength appears even weaker than our original estimates. Their largest warship is barely 1/10 the size of our smallest vessel." Corvin examined the data with growing satisfaction. Human ships looked crude and angular, like boxes with engines attached. Their weapons appeared to be simple projectile systems, the kind of technology his species had abandoned thousands of years ago. Even their energy shields seemed primitive, flickering and unstable compared to Confederation technology. "They still use kinetic weapons," Vexera observed, her crystal form shimmering with disbelief. Actual metal projectiles fired by chemical explosions. How did such a backward species even achieve space travel? Luck, Corvin decided. Or perhaps they stole the technology from a more advanced species. It hardly matters now. The fleet moved through space in perfect formation, a telepathic link allowing instant coordination between all vessels. Each ship knew exactly where every other ship would be at any given moment. Their weapons could target enemies with mathematical precision. Their shields could adapt to any threat in microseconds. Against such organized perfection, The scattered human resistance looked pathetic. Admiral Razorclaw announced, "We are receiving a transmission from the human Admiral Shin Ga-yoon. She requests a meeting to discuss surrender terms." Corvin's energy form pulsed with satisfaction. Sooner than expected. Display the message. Holographic screen showed a human female in a dark blue uniform, her face serious, but showing the strain of defeat.
Admiral Corvin, Admiral Shin Ga-yoon of the Terran Defense Fleet. Our governments have authorized me to negotiate the terms
Of our compliance with Confederation requirements? See how quickly they crumble, Corvin observed to his officers. It's not even a single battle, and they already seek to surrender. But something in the human's eyes caught his attention. Despite her words about surrender, she did not look defeated. There was something else there, a hardness that seemed strange for a member of a species about to give up. "Shall the first respond, Admiral?" asked the communications officer.
Not yet,
Corvin decided. Let them wait.
let them understand how completely
Outmatched they are. Fear will make them more cooperative. On the tactical display, human ships continued their apparent retreat. Some disappeared into hyperspace. Others took refuge behind planets or in asteroid fields. A few seemed to be running toward the outer edges of their solar systems, as if hoping to escape into deep space. "Cowards," Razorclaw observed. "They abandoned their own colonies to save themselves." "Standard behavior for lower-tier species," agreed Vexera. "When faced with superior force, they think only of individual survival." Corvin felt the collective agreement of his fleet through their telepathic network. Every officer, every crew member, every being in his command shared the same confidence. This was not a war. It was barely even a demonstration of power. "Begin the final approach," he ordered. "All ships, standard intimidation formation. Let them see the full might of the Confederation before we accept their surrender." The fleet moved forward like a wall of death, their energy weapons charging, their shields glowing with power. Behind them, the full might of the Galactic Confederation stretched across thousands of star systems. Ahead of them, the scattered and apparently panicked human forces seemed to shrink back in terror. Neither Corvin nor any of his officers noticed the small smile that had appeared on Admiral Shin Ga-yoon's face as she watched their approach. 3 kilometers beneath the bustling streets of Seoul, Dr. Bae-ji-ho stood in the center of humanity's greatest secret. The underground facility stretched for miles in every direction, filled with technology that would have shocked the Galactic Confederation into silence. "Neural dampening field generators are at full power," reported his assistant, Lee Hyeri, her fingers dancing across controls that glowed with soft blue light. "The moment their fleet enters our engagement zones, every telepathic link will go." Dead Ji-ho nodded, watching dozens of screens that showed the approaching alien fleet. Above ground, the world appeared to be falling apart. News broadcasts showed panicked civilians fleeing Earth's major cities. Military units seemed to retreat in complete disorder. Government leaders continued their very public arguments about how to handle the crisis. What the aliens could not see were the massive underground cities that had been under construction for 3 years. Hidden shipyards carved into asteroids, weapons platforms that existed in dimensions the Confederation did not even know about, and most importantly, the quantum communication network that connected every human world instantly, without any signal. The aliens could detect or intercept. "Sir," Lieutenant Park Suban called from her station. "President Yu is beginning her next performance in 10 minutes. Ji-ho smiled as he watched the president prepare for another staged argument with colonial governor named Yoon-ji. Every word had been carefully written, every gesture practiced. The aliens thought they were watching human chaos, but they were actually seeing humanity's greatest acting performance. "How are our people holding up?" Ji-ho asked. "Perfectly," Hyeri replied. "Governor Name is complaining about Earth abandoning the colonies. Defense Minister Oh is publicly blaming Admiral Shin for the military's failures. The aliens are eating it up." On the main screen, Admiral Corvin's fleet continued its confident approach. The alien ships moved in perfect formation, their telepathic coordination humming between vessels like invisible strings. They expected to find scattered human forces that could barely communicate with each other. Instead, They were walking into the most carefully planned trap in galactic history. Captain Shijun-ho is in position, reported another technician. All stealth platforms are ready. The aliens still cannot detect them. Ji-ho felt a moment of pride. Human engineers had spent years studying every piece of alien technology they could get their hands on. They had learned how Confederation sensors worked, how their shields operated, how their weapons targeted enemies. And then, they had built technology specifically designed to counter every advantage the aliens possessed. "Sir, we're receiving the coded signal from Admiral Shin," Park Soo-bin announced. "She's ready to begin Phase 2. On another screen, Ji-ho watched Admiral Shin Gaeon sit in her command chair aboard the human flagship. 2 alien sensors, her ship, looked like a crude metal box powered by primitive fusion engines. What they could not detect were the quantum processors hidden in the hull, the adaptive armor that could reshape itself in microseconds, or the weapons that had been designed. Using principles the Confederation had never encountered, all units, Admiral Shin's voice came through the quantum network, maintain the illusion. Let them think they're winning until the very last moment. Across 47 star systems, human forces continued their carefully choreographed retreat. Ships fled in apparent panic, their engines seeming to malfunction at critical moments. Ground forces abandoned their positions, leaving behind equipment that looked far more primitive than it actually was. The aliens saw exactly what they expected to see: an inferior species crumbling under the threat of superior force. Neural dampening. "Field test successful," Hyeri reported quietly. "We conducted a small-scale test on a Confederation probe ship. Her telepathic network went completely silent for 17 minutes before they realized what had happened." Ji-ho nodded grimly. The Confederation's greatest strength was their ability to coordinate perfectly through telepathic links. Ship commanders could share thoughts instantly. Weapons could be targeted through shared consciousness, and battle plans could be executed with mathematical precision. But humans had discovered something interesting about telepathic species. They became completely helpless when that link was severed. Like people who had never walked suddenly being forced to run a marathon. How close are they? "Admiral Corvin's fleet will enter the outer engagement zone in 43 minutes, Park Soo-bin replied. "Once they cross that line, there will be no escape." On the tactical display, red dots representing alien ships continued their steady advance toward blue dots representing human positions. To any observer, it looked like a massive force about to crush a much smaller, weaker enemy. The truth was exactly the opposite. Another technician called out. "We're detecting increased alien communications. They're discussing surrender terms for humanity." Ji-ho almost laughed. The aliens were so confident that they were already planning how to divide up human territory. Admiral Corvin was probably choosing which worlds would make the best mining colonies. "Let them plan," Ji-ho said quietly. 43 minutes. "They're going to discover that humanity learned something very important from our first contact with galactic civilization." "What's that, sir?" Hyeri asked. Ji-ho smiled as he watched the alien fleet continue its approach to doom. "We learned that sometimes the best way to win a war is to let your enemy think they've already won." Above ground, the acting continued. Presidents argued, governors panicked, and military leaders seemed to despair. The greatest deception in human history played out on every news channel across the galaxy, and the aliens believed every word of it. The moment Admiral Corvin's fleet crossed into human space, every telepathic voice in his mind went completely silent. For the first time in his 1,000-year existence, the Vorthok commander found himself truly alone in his own thoughts. "What is happening?" he demanded, his energy form flickering with panic. "Vexara, report." But Commander Vexara was having her own crisis. The crystalline being's body, normally bright with shared telepathic energy, had gone dim and lifeless. Across the entire Confederation fleet, officers who had never operated without mental links suddenly found themselves isolated and confused. Systems are functioning normally," Vexara managed to say through vocal communication, a primitive method she had not used in centuries. "But the telepathic network is completely dead." On the bridge of the human flagship Determination, Captain Un Soyang watched her instruments with grim satisfaction. Neural dampening fields are at maximum effectiveness. All alien ships are now operating blind. Admiral Shingeon stood beside her, no longer playing the role of a defeated commander. Her earlier surrender request had been pure theater, designed to draw the alien fleet deeper into the trap. Now her true nature showed a brilliant strategist who had spent 3 years preparing for this exact moment. All units, she commanded through the quantum network that the aliens still could not detect, execute Phoenix Protocol. Show them what humanity really learned from first contact. Across the battlefield, human ships that had appeared to be fleeing in panic suddenly stopped running. Their crude, boxy hulls began to shimmer and change as adaptive armor revealed its true capabilities. What had looked like primitive metal? Plating unfolded into complex defensive systems that seemed to bend space itself. Impossible, Razorclaw screeched on Corvin's bridge, its mandibles clicking in terror. The human ships are transforming. But the real shock came when human weapons began to fire. The Confederation had expected simple kinetic projectiles, metal bullets fired by chemical explosions. Instead, beams of pure energy lashed out from human ships, striking with pinpoint accuracy at exactly the weakest points of alien shielding. How do they know where to target our shields? Fexar asked in growing panic. Our defensive frequencies are classified at the highest levels. Bei Jiho, monitoring the battle from his underground command center, smiled as he watched his life's work in action. Because we've been studying you for 3 years, he said quietly. Every piece of technology you've shown us, every casual demonstration of your superiority. We recorded it all, analyzed it all, and built weapons specifically designed to counter it. On the alien flagship, warning alarms began to sound as human weapons cut through shields that had protected Confederation vessels for millennia. The Vorthok crew, normally coordinated through telepathic precision, stumbled around their posts like drunken children. Admiral, the intelligence officer whispered, the humans are using adaptive countermeasures. Their weapons are learning our defensive patterns and adjusting faster than we can compensate. Corvin's energy form pulsed with rage and confusion. A Tier 9 species cannot possess such technology. It violates every classification protocol. But the evidence was burning in space around them. Human ships moved with impossible coordination while alien vessels drifted in confusion. The telepathic species had become so dependent on their mental links that they had forgotten how to fight as individuals. Captain Kim Woo-jin, commanding a squadron of human stealth ships, watched as his targets tried desperately to reorganize their formation. All units, implement Chaos Protocol. A time to show them why they classified our thinking as chaotic. A human attack pattern that followed would have been impossible for any Confederation computer to predict. Ships appeared from nowhere, struck with devastating precision, then vanished again before the aliens could respond. Human tactics made no logical sense. Commanders would retreat from advantageous positions, attack from impossible angles, and coordinate maneuvers that seemed to violate basic military doctrine. Their battle patterns, the Krathan tactical officer reported in growing panic. Our computers cannot model their strategy. They fight like madmen. What the aliens did not understand was that humanity's chaos was actually their greatest strength. While Confederation species had spent millennia following rigid tactical doctrines, humans had continued to innovate and adapt. Their unpredictable thinking patterns, resistant to telepathic influence, now generated battlefield strategies that overwhelmed alien prediction systems. Sir, a communications officer called to Admiral Corvin, we're detecting massive energy signatures throughout human space. Installations that were invisible to our sensors are suddenly active. On tactical displays across the Confederation fleet, space around them suddenly lit up with contacts. Entire planets revealed defensive networks that made their own fortress worlds look primitive. Hidden shipyards launched vessels of revolutionary design. Asteroid mining stations opened like flowers to reveal massive weapons platforms. Admiral Shin Geong's voice cut through the chaos on all Confederation frequencies. Attention, alien fleet. You have been deceived. The scattered, primitive humans you expected to crush never existed. What you face now is humanity's true response to your arrogance. As if to emphasize her words, a massive human battle station decloaked directly in front of Corvan's flagship. The structure was larger than most Confederation space cities, bristling with weapons that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. "This is impossible," Corvan whispered, his energy form dimming with shock. Tier 9 species do not possess such capabilities. Admiral Shin's image appeared on his view screen, no longer pretending to be defeated. "Perhaps your classification system was flawed, Admiral. Perhaps you never understood what humanity was truly capable of when we stopped playing by your rules." Human ships continued to decloak throughout the battlefield, revealing the true scale of their preparation. The aliens realized they were not facing a scattered, primitive species, but a military force that had been specifically designed to counter every advantage the Confederation possessed. The galaxy's ancient hierarchy was about to discover that evolution had not stopped when they declared it should. Admiral Corvan's flagship drifted powerless in the void. Its once mighty weapon systems turned against themselves by human technology that rewrote alien programming faster than Confederation. Engineers could understand. Around him, the remnants of his fleet floated like broken toys, their crews trapped inside ships that no longer obeyed their commands. "Status report," Corvan whispered, his energy form barely maintaining cohesion as the reality of his defeat sank in. "All systems compromised," Vexora replied, her crystalline body flickering weakly. "The humans have taken control of our own technology. Our weapons target our own ships. Our shields protect their vessels instead of ours." Through the viewport, Corvan watched human ships move between the disabled Confederation vessels like predators, circling wounded prey. But instead of delivering killing blows, they were doing something far more devastating. They were broadcasting. President Yu Jiwan's image appeared on every screen throughout Confederation space, her words translated simultaneously into thousands of alien languages. "Citizens of the galaxy," she began, her voice carrying the quiet authority of someone who had just shattered an empire. "For too long, your leaders have told you that some species are naturally superior to others. Today, we prove that superiority is nothing more than a lie used to justify oppression. On the mining world of Kepler for 4 to be, enslaved Veltar workers stopped their labors to stare at screens showing human fleets liberating planet after planet. The gaseous beings had spent centuries believing they were only fit for information gathering and communication services. Now they watched humans sharing technology that would allow them to build their own starships. Captain Kim Woojin led the Liberation Fleet to the Crystal Worlds, where Zephyrian artisans had been forced to create luxury items for their Vorthok. "Masters, you are free," he announced to the crystalline beings who gathered in their city squares. "Your creativity belongs to you now, not to those who claim to own you." The Krathan homeworld, where proud warriors had been reduced to serving as enforcers for the Confederation hierarchy, erupted in celebration as human broadcasts reached their colonies. General Na Yusiok of the Human Liberation Corps stood before their assembly and declared, "A warrior's strength should protect the innocent, not oppress them. We offer you alliance, not servitude." Dr. Bejaho watched from his command center as the cascade effect spread across the galaxy. Each liberated world encouraged others to rebel, species that had accepted their proper place in the hierarchy. For millennia, suddenly rediscovered capabilities they had been told they did not possess. Sir Lee Hayari reported, "We're receiving surrender requests from Confederation regional governors across 17 sectors, are offering to negotiate new relationships with their local species." "The resistance movements?" Jiho asked. "Growing by the hour. The Veltar have formed their first independent government in 3,000 years. The Zephyrians are declaring their homeworld a free, artistic republic. Even some of the smaller Vorthok colonies are rejecting the authority of the High Council. On the former Confederation capital world, the ancient council chamber sat empty. Kelvith Prime and the other High Council members had retreated to their private dimensions. Cut off from the telepathic network that had once connected them to billions of minds across the galaxy, Admiral Gil Shingaewang walked through the abandoned halls, her footsteps echoing in spaces that had once decided the fate of entire species. Captain Sha Junho followed behind her, documenting everything for the historical record. It's strange, Shin observed, looking at the empty throne where Kelvith Prime had once held court. They seemed so powerful when they could control everyone's thoughts. Without that, they're just frightened old beings hiding from the consequences of their actions. What happens now? Cha asked. Now we help build something better, Shin replied. A galaxy where species cooperate instead of dominating each other. Where innovation comes from freedom, not fear. Back on Earth, President Yu stood before the assembled representatives of 47 liberated worlds. Former mining colonies, the enslaved factory planets, the species that had been scattered across the galaxy as cheap labor, all of them now had voices in determining their own futures. The Galactic Confederation claimed they brought order to the galaxy. She addressed the gathering. But order built on oppression is not peace. It is simply fear-given structure. True civilization comes from cooperation between equals, not domination by self-proclaimed superiors. The Veltar representative, speaking through translation devices for the first time in centuries, asked the question that was on everyone's mind. What prevents humanity from simply taking the Confederation's place as the dominant species? You smiled, because we learned something important from watching your old empire collapse. The moment any species declares itself superior to others, it begins the process of its own destruction. Superiority is a trap that makes you weak by making you blind to the potential of those around you. Dr. Kim Sora, now serving as humanity's chief science advisor to the new Galactic Alliance, stood to address the assembly. We offer our technology freely to all species, not as gifts from superiors to inferiors, but as contributions from equals working toward common goals. The galaxy would take generations to fully heal from millennia of enforced hierarchy. But as human ships helped former slave worlds build their own defense fleets, as Zephyrian artists created beauty free from Vorthok censorship, and as Veltar information networks spread knowledge instead of propaganda, something unprecedented began. To emerge, for the first time in galactic history, a civilization based on cooperation rather than domination was taking shape. And at its heart was a simple principle that humanity had carried from their small blue world to the stars, that every being had value. And every species had potential that could only be discovered in freedom. The Confederation's hubris had been galactic in scope, but humanity's response proved final, not through conquest, but through liberation.